Have you ever felt overwhelmed by the sheer volume of advice on leadership? Perhaps finding yourself wondering how to bridge that gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it.
Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere.
What if the secret to becoming a truly impactful leader wasn't about grand gestures or radical overnight overhauls, but about mastering tiny daily improvements that compound over time, creating monumental shifts?
Oh, it's a compelling idea, isn't it? The notion that profound, lasting change can stem from these consistent, often subtle daily shifts in our approach.
Yeah.
It really encourages us to look inward at our own behaviors and then outward at the intricate ways they influence everyone we interact with.
That's exactly the kind of deep dive we're taking today. We're unpacking 1% Leadership, Master the Small Daily Improvements That Set Great Leaders Apart by Andy Ellis. Now, Ellis is a fascinating figure. He's a former Chief Information Security Officer with a career that has spanned a remarkable array of fields, from construction and military service to cybersecurity and beyond.
Quite the background.
He's essentially taken decades of incredibly diverse practical experience and distilled it into truly actionable insights that feel both authentic and surprisingly witty sometimes.
Yeah, he has a great voice. What Ellis does so powerfully is frame leadership not as a static destination you arrive at, but as a continuous journey of incremental growth.
Right, a journey, not a finish line.
It's a subtle but critical shift in perspective. This journey, as he outlines, fundamentally begins with personal self-improvement that thoughtfully extends to how you interact with your team and ultimately influences the entire organization. It truly cascades.
Our mission today is to thoroughly unpack that core premise. We're going to extract the most important nuggets of wisdom from his work, explore some of the genuinely surprising facts he shares, and trust me, there are a few, and offer practical takeaways from his candid, often humorous reflections. We'll look at specific examples and vivid anecdotes directly from his experience to see how these seemingly small 1% shifts can lead to monumental change for you, your team, and your broader environment.
Sounds great. Let's get into it.
So let's begin to truly unpack this. We're kicking things off with Part 1, Personal Leadership, the Foundation Within.
Starting point.
Ellis really drives home this point that personal improvement isn't just some abstract self-help pursuit. It is, in fact, a fundamental prerequisite for professional leadership.
Absolutely foundational.
He argues that your internal state, your behaviors, and your overall outlook profoundly influence everyone you lead. It's about becoming, as he puts it, a light to yourself first, and only then extending that light to those around you. It makes me wonder, what's the immediate implication if a leader doesn't cultivate that internal light?
That's a fantastic question, and it gets right to the heart of his argument. Ellis suggests that if a leader, for instance, never seems to have fun, they've implicitly, maybe unconsciously, banned fun for their team.
Wow. Okay.
If they never acknowledge their own mistakes, their team will inevitably fear ever being caught making one themselves. Your affect, your personal disposition as a leader, powerfully constrains and shapes the behaviors of those you lead, often without you even realizing it.
Like a silent set of rules.
It's a form of silent, powerful communication. Yeah.
That makes profound sense. Your personal growth, especially in how you interact with people and manage your own state, truly becomes the bedrock for your entire leadership style.
Couldn't agree more.
So let's dig into how Ellis suggests cultivating a positive mindset, starting with the deeply personal idea that your attitude is always fundamentally in your control.
Absolutely.
Hey.
Ellis presents a profound choice here. We can respond to negative external forces with more negativity reacting with anger, resentment, or frustration.
Which is often the default, right? The knee-jerk reaction.
It often is.
Or
we can consciously choose grace. This means actively countering darkness with your own internal light, not through destruction or confrontation, but through peace and joy.
That sounds harder.
It's a harder path, yeah. It requires self-restraint, much like a strict diet where you consciously pass up tempting treats. You pass up that immediate, often addictive rush of righteous anger.
That feeling.
It's about a deliberate act of emotional discipline.
He gives a wonderful, almost poetic example of this, almost a daily practice, in Counting Your Blessings.
Oh, yes.
He recounts an anecdote where a colleague was asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, how fortunate do you feel? And the immediate fantastic response was 10. I'm not a nematode.
Slight chuckle. It's brilliant. So simple.
It's so disarming and immediate. It's not just about simple gratitude, is it? It's about building a daily foundation of serenity even when circumstances are challenging.
Precisely. This isn't just a fleeting thought. It's a deliberate, almost meditative practice.
Hmm.
Ellis shares his own personal habit of training his reflexive response to the common question, how are you, to be, I'm fantastic.
Right, I remember reading that.
And this isn't merely a polite reply or some kind of forced optimism. For him, it's a daily, consistent self-reminder to actively seek out and appreciate the excellence and grace he's blessed with in his own life.
Okay.
And then, crucially, to share that widely. He notes that while people might initially laugh or offer gentle mockery,
Yeah, you can imagine that.
they often end up smiling because they themselves feel a little more fantastic just by hearing it. It truly creates a positive, self-reinforcing ripple effect in his daily interactions.
And his wife has this really wonderful tradition at the dinner table each night, sharing a bright spot from the day.
The bright spot. Love that.
Even on the worst days, that act of consciously looking for and articulating something positive builds that critical foundation of serenity, preventing the day's negativity from taking over everything. It's about actively curating your emotional landscape.
Absolutely curating. That's the perfect word.
From cultivating a positive mindset, Ellis moves directly into the absolute critical practice of embracing imperfection and learning from failure. This really sets the stage for genuine, sustainable growth, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, this is huge.
He starts with the incredibly powerful and often counterintuitive idea that becoming right requires accepting that you might be wrong.
This is one of my favorite insights from the book, honestly. Ellis actually celebrates being wrong. He calls it a superpower.
A superpower? How so?
Think about it. When you believe you're already right, when your mind is closed off to alternative possibilities, it's incredibly difficult to learn anything new.
Right, yeah, you're stuck.
You're already convinced you have the answer. But when you acknowledge that you might be wrong, or even that you are wrong, an immediate and expansive opportunity for rapid learning presents itself.
Okay. Because you're open.
It's a direct gateway to acquiring new knowledge quickly and efficiently.
He then introduces this concept of rhetorical jujitsu, which I found incredibly clever.
Yes.
It's essentially using your counterparty's energy, their innate desire to be right, or to add value by disagreeing to your advantage. So you start a conversation by saying something like, I might be wrong about this, but I'm thinking. How does that disarm someone and actually move things forward, rather than getting stuck in a battle of wills?
It's remarkably effective.
Yeah.
Many people, particularly in professional settings, derive a great deal of value from making a contribution they believe wouldn't exist without them.
Right, they want to add their stake.
Exactly. This often manifests as disagreeing or pointing out flaws. By proactively starting from a position of potential error, by inviting correction, you disarm that reflex.
You give them the opening they were looking for anyway.
Precisely. You allow their disagreement to become a catalyst for actual progress and agreement, rather than an impediment. Imagine you're proposing a new marketing strategy. Instead of stating, this is the best strategy, you might open with, I've drafted this strategy and I'm sure there are gaps or better approaches I've missed, but here's my initial thinking. You're inviting their input, validating their expertise, and paradoxically, steering the conversation towards a stronger version of your initial idea.
That immediately makes sense. It's about letting go of the ego of being right to achieve a more productive collaborative outcome.
Spot on. Ego gets in the way so often.
And it connects perfectly to the next idea. Even if you don't succeed, a story about failure can be a reward.
The stories.
Ellis points out that not everyone leads a charmed life. Every day includes something that goes wrong. But when plans fail, you don't just get an experience, you get a story. And crucially, you get to choose how you tell that story, extracting learning and even humor from imperfection.
He distinguishes between two types of fun here, which really helps reframe negative experiences. There's type 1 fun, which is fun you have while doing it, like a relaxing picnic.
The easy fun.
And then there's type 2 fun, which is only fun in the telling of its horribleness, like, say, running a marathon, or perhaps a truly disastrous camping trip.
Laughs slightly. I've had some type 2 fun.
Haven't we all? This distinction helps us process and narrate challenges. He recounts a vivid anecdote from his own career, the infamous suspended machines incident.
Oh yeah, tell us about that one.
During a critical software install, a colleague warned him about a lot of suspended machines, a technical term that sounds, well, routine. Ellis initially, perhaps a bit overconfident, dismissed it.
Right, he was like, I know, we're doing a software install, and hung up.
Pretty much. But the colleague called back, insisting, no, Andy, the whole wall is yellow.
The whole wall. meaning...
This meant 75% of the network was suspended, a complete disaster. It highlighted a critical lesson for him. Human errors often result from seemingly simple, yet very fragile, complex systems.
Wow.
And crucially, it taught him not to dismiss a warning from a colleague, no matter how minor it seems at first. That person on the ground often sees things the leader doesn't.
That's a huge lesson. Listen to the warnings.
What stands out here, beyond the technical lesson, is that Ellis, by openly telling this embarrassing story, helped future colleagues see that being the human trigger in a crisis wasn't necessarily career-ending.
Ah, that's important. Psychological safety.
Exactly. It demonstrated resilience, a learning mindset, and a commitment to shared improvement rather than blame. Ultimately, every activity yields either an experience or a story, and the story is what keeps the learning fresh, relatable, and psychologically safe for others to emulate.
That's a powerful shifting perspective, moving from just having an experience to actively crafting a narrative that aids learning and encourages psychological safety. You're giving permission for others to fail and to learn from it.
Permission to be human, really.
Now, let's turn our attention to navigating interpersonal dynamics, where Ellis offers some truly counterintuitive yet incredibly effective advice for any leader.
Okay.
The first is gift kindness where it isn't expected. This really challenges our default reaction.
It really does. This chapter begins with Ellis's experience as a busy executive, deluged by dozens of unsolicited, often rage-inducing sales emails daily.
Oh, I can imagine. We all get them.
His usual response, like many of his colleagues who sometimes resorted to snark or passive aggression, was to simply ignore them.
Yeah.
It was the path of least resistance.
Makes sense. Just delete.
And then a colleague asked him, "Have you ever tried just telling them no?" It seems so simple, right?
Yeah, but who has the time?
But from Ellis's perspective, it felt unnecessary, an extra step. To the sender, though, it would be surprising, a departure from the usual radio silence.
True. A reply is rare.
So Ellis developed a no template, a brief FAQ addressing common objections for declining meetings, outlining why he wasn't interested. He could deliver it in literally 4 clicks.
4 clicks. That's efficient.
Very. And the impact was genuinely surprising. He received replies thanking him for the best no message they'd ever received, and the template was even shared within marketing organizations as an example of good practice.
No way. Just for saying no politely.
This unexpected act of kindness, delivered efficiently and respectfully, resulted in positive feedback, fewer unwanted emails, and even some goodwill. It shows how a small, freely given gesture can disrupt routine, improve someone's day, and become surprisingly impactful in fostering better professional relationships, even with people you'll never meet.
It also highlights Ellis's key attributes of kindness. It must be joyous, improving someone's day, unexpected, disrupting routine, and freely given without any expectation of reward.
No strings attached.
It's an inexpensive but profoundly impactful act that truly disrupts the norm of ignoring or being rude.
A tiny shift with a big ripple.
Following that, Ellis advises, don't borrow evil where it wasn't intended. This cuts deep into how we frame our professional interactions and the language we use.
Yeah, the language we use is so important. Historically, business and pop culture have leaned heavily on military and combat metaphors, the art of war, defense in depth, zero-sum games, battle plans.
We hear it all the time, fighting fires, winning the battle.
Exactly. This constantly trains us to view many professional engagements as conflict and us versus them narrative. The profound problem Ellis highlights is that when we're righteously self-justified in treating others poorly, perhaps seeing them as an opponent or a roadblock, from their perspective, our actions look exactly like a villain's behavior. It creates unnecessary conflict, hostility, and negative energy where none might have been intended.
So we see ourselves as the hero, but they see us as the bad guy.
Pretty much. So the solution is a powerful perspective shift. Step back and consciously view the situation from the other person's point of view. Recognize that your actions, while perfectly justified to you, might appear utterly villainous to them.
That takes empathy and humility.
It does. It's about practicing charity and grace in your interpretations. Actively seek out plausible, charitable excuses or beliefs for people whose decisions you question or whose behavior seems baffling.
Assume good intent, maybe, or at least not evil intent.
Exactly. Ellis emphasizes that people often make what he calls middling, marginal decisions. They might not exercise or eat well, or they waste money on baffling items in their personal lives. These aren't always malicious choices. They're often based on different worlds, different priorities, different pressures, and different lived experiences.
We don't know their whole story.
Precisely. Understanding that everyone inhabits a slightly different world significantly reduces unneeded stress and conflict for everyone involved. You're not borrowing their perceived evil into your own mindset.
Then there's the absolutely crucial topic of apologies. An uncompelled apology unburdens everyone. This is something many leaders struggle with, seeing it wrongly as a sign of weakness.
It's such a common misconception. Ellis powerfully argues that ignoring harm, even unintended harm, leaves a small poison in the victim's mind. It's a wound that goes unacknowledged.
A splinter.
Yeah, exactly. This unaddressed harm will inevitably haunt future interactions because the perpetrator has unilaterally decided the victim can live without recognition of being harmed. This is precisely where a sincere, unprompted apology becomes vitally important. It's an act of deep respect.
He references research on the 6 elements of a sincere apology, right? Like expressing regret, explaining, taking responsibility.
Yes. Lewicki, Poland, and Laump's work. Expressing regret, explaining failure, acknowledging responsibility, declaring repentance, offering repair, and requesting forgiveness. He even gives a template sentence. I'm sorry that I took this action that harmed you this way. I wish that I had done otherwise. And in the future, I will do this differently. I can't undo the harm, but can I help by doing this other thing? Can you possibly forgive me?
That's incredibly specific, but helpful if you're struggling with how to phrase it.
It is. What's truly fascinating and counterintuitive here is Ellis's perspective that for leaders, a free and sincere apology is actually a trapping of strength, not a weakness.
Strength, how?
It's a deliberate display of integrity and courage. He shares his own examples as a manager, whether it was not giving timely feedback, changing project goals unexpectedly, or making ill-considered comments. In every case, the apology freely given showed he wasn't afraid to admit a misstep, which paradoxically made him stronger in the eyes of his team and peers.
Okay, I see. It builds trust.
It demonstrates a profound commitment to better relationships and fixing interactions, and it implicitly invites partners to reciprocate that level of honesty.
That's a really insightful take, that an apology isn't just about admitting fault, but proactively strengthening the relationship. It seems counterintuitive to think an apology could make you stronger, but Ellis makes a compelling case.
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception is that an apology equals admitting total fault and therefore total weakness, which might then be exploited. They fear a loss of authority or reputation.
Right.
But Ellis's examples show it's the opposite. It builds trust and respect. When you apologize sincerely and specifically, you show that you value the relationship and the work more than your own ego. That's a powerful message.
It makes the relationship stronger even when both parties might be at fault. By apologizing for your part, you show a genuine interest in fixing the interaction rather than just laying blame.
Exactly. You own your piece.
Continuing on this journey of self-reflection and emotional intelligence, Ellis tackles the concept of regret with a truly freeing perspective. Regret is an act of forgiveness to your past self.
This is a profound shift.
This is a profound shift in how we might typically view past mistakes or missed opportunities.
This point really forces you to think. Ellis highlights the paradox that if you could truly undo a past negative event, what else would you be unintentionally undoing?
Like the butterfly effect.
Exactly. If you could erase one specific bad moment, you would also inherently erase all the good things, all the lessons, all the growth that happened since that moment. This could include the birth of children, the formation of crucial relationships, the success of businesses, or invaluable life lessons learned from that very difficulty.
Wow, okay. You can't just surgically remove the bad parts.
It's a powerful thought experiment because it reveals how interconnected our experiences are.
It's a powerful thought experiment. The lesson here is that regret, when used constructively, allows you to learn from the past, extract the wisdom, and then focus your energy entirely forward on making better future choices, rather than getting stuck in a continuous loop of what-ifs about what can't be changed.
Forgive your past self for not knowing then what you know now.
It's about accepting your past self with grace, thereby enabling your future self to grow unburdened.
And that leads directly to stop visiting your museum of past grievances.
The museum of grievances. I like that metaphor.
Ellis shares a cautionary tale of a job candidate who, no matter the question, would pivot to complaining about past employers, past injustices, past slights.
Yikes. Red flag.
A huge one. This person exuded negativity and a complete lack of self-awareness, making it incredibly easy to pass on them, despite any technical skills they might have had.
He uses the vivid metaphor of building a personal museum of grievances, a carefully curated collection of memories of those who wronged you.
Collecting hurt.
While this might provide a false sense of power or justification, it ultimately taints your joy with resentment. Your home or office, or more accurately your mind, becomes a monument to past harms rather than a launch pad for a joyous and productive future.
It's like living in the past, but only the bad parts. The solution, Ellis suggests, is profound in its simplicity. Cultivate indifference towards these past slights.
Indifference, not forgiveness.
Indifference.
Yeah.
He urges us to metaphorically pack away these negative mementos, making it harder to revisit past errors or continually cast others as villains in our personal narrative.
Put them in the attic, basically.
Exactly. The idea is that the true opposite of hate isn't love, it's indifference, achieved by actively refusing to be reminded of petty negatives that serve no purpose. Why, he asks, would you choose to live in a museum dedicated to negativity if you wouldn't even want to visit one?
Good point.
It's about freeing yourself from that immense mental and emotional burden.
So, what does this all mean for maximizing joy and well-being in our daily lives and as leaders? Ellis has some fantastic insights here, starting with the deeply personal idea that the only thing keeping you from having more fun than you are having right now is you.
This one really hit home for me. He describes his own experience at his 50th birthday, which coincidentally coincided with a sales offsite during COVID. He found himself spontaneously dancing in the rain in Miami.
Dancing in the rain. Love it.
Unconcerned about his image or what others might think, it was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. And he realized in that moment that image concerns didn't matter as much as he once thought. This marked a significant shift in his ability to truly enjoy life more fully.
Here's where it gets truly impactful. He attributes much of this learning to his own children and the liberating perspective they offer.
Kids are great teachers for this.
He shares the "Dad, let's walk on the wall" anecdote, a moment many parents can absolutely relate to. It's that internal struggle between adult self-consciousness about being silly or unconventional in public and the spontaneous, uninhibited joy of a child.
Right, the "what will people think" voice.
Overcoming that self-consciousness dancing like nobody's watching, even when you know everyone is, reveals a fundamental truth. You get in your own way. Your worry about what others think, your internal critic, often stops you from having genuine fun.
He really encourages us to examine the unspoken rules we live by that might inhibit joy, like professional norms about wearing boring clothes or turning down new activities because you might be bad at them.
Yeah, the fear of looking foolish.
He champions embracing little acts of joyful resistance, like wearing brightly colored socks or a hand-knitted shawl, or trying new exotic foods while traveling, even if they initially seem strange.
Little rebellions of joy.
Exactly. The core point is to seize opportunities for joy and self-expression, regardless of perceived skill, because your enjoyment at trying something new is available only if you choose to grab it.
And building on that, he talks about make expensive time worth it. This is about maximizing the value of your time, especially when there's a high emotional cost involved, for yourself or for loved ones.
This is particularly relevant when you or a loved one has paid a high price for a situation, like a spouse juggling kids alone while you're on a demanding business trip.
That's a common one for many.
Ellis stresses that adding your own misery about being away to their misery isn't going to make things better for anyone. It simply amplifies the negative.
Misery loves company, but it doesn't help.
Right. Instead, you've already paid the cost, so it's your responsibility to maximize the value of that time for yourself and for them.
Okay, so how do you do that?
He describes doing what he calls outlandish tourist things on business trips that his wife would genuinely enjoy, even if he's personally afraid of heights or dislikes cold water.
Prockles. Like acting as her proxy tourist.
Kinda, like climbing the Sydney Harbor Bridge despite his fear, or swimming in frigid ocean waters and sending her videos so she can have a vicarious experience and share in the adventure.
That's actually really sweet.
He also makes a point of bringing back keepsakes, deliberately creating shared memories even during trials or periods of separation. It's a beautiful, intentional way to ensure the price isn't always paid by the same person in a relationship, fostering equity and connection.
Sharing the burden, but also sharing the potential upside.
Precisely. And that leads into what he calls one of your greatest assets. Your wellness is one of the greatest assets you control.
Ah, self-care.
Crucial. He draws a very apt analogy from pre-flight safety briefings. Secure your own mask first. It's a fundamental truth that applies far beyond an airplane.
You can't help others if you're incapacitated.
Exactly. He recounts a familiar work emergency scenario. A 2:30 a.m. phone call to address a crisis, back in bed by 4 a.m., then up at 6 a.m. to face the day.
Been there. It's brutal.
The result? A day spent in a haze, completely unproductive, and a detriment to his well-being. He challenges the common mistake in prioritization where we assume A is more important than B means don't do B until A is done.
Right, the zero-sum thinking.
Instead, he argues it should mean B shouldn't starve A. Both work and exercise, for example, are important, and one shouldn't completely replace the other or be sacrificed entirely.
Finding balance, not just replacement.
Your wellness, physical, mental, and emotional, directly increases both your quality of life and your career productivity. It truly ought to be your highest priority.
Easier said than done sometimes.
True. This involves strategic planning, like health maintenance, fitness routines, proper nutrition, and adequate sleep, but also wise tactical choices. Do you habitually stay up late for a game that doesn't significantly add to your well-being?
Ouch. Maybe.
Do you work when you're sick, spreading germs and prolonging your illness? Do you remain in the office unproductively, simply to be seen? These tactical choices accumulate.
This raises an important question for you, the listener. What tactical choices are you making that might be subtly eroding your wellness, perhaps without you even realizing the cumulative impact?
It's those small daily drains.
Ellis emphasizes the absolute necessity of setting and sticking to boundaries, even in environments that don't inherently respect them.
You have to protect yourself.
He suggests a brilliant tactic: blocking your calendar for a pretend vacation day after returning from a real vacation to ease back in and maintain the wellness benefits, rather than crashing back into burnout.
Like a decompression day. Smart.
The core message is clear. No one is going to do this for you. You have to do it for yourself, and then crucially model it for others on your team.
Lead by example on wellness, too.
Moving from personal well-being, Ellis takes us into the realm of strategic growth and resilience, starting with a truly nuanced idea. Retain the confidence of the new learner and temper it with the caution of the old hand.
Finding that sweet spot.
It speaks to finding that sweet spot for growth.
He highlights overconfidence bias, often amusingly seen in Darwin Awards, a belief that one's capabilities are far greater than they are, most obvious in those barely skilled or just starting out.
The Dunning-Kruger effect in action.
Exactly. Ellis provides his own relatable example. Attempting to swim between beaches and Kauai with just Vibram Five Fingers and triathlon shorts, thinking it could be an easy feat.
Rough. Okay.
This led to skinned knees in an aborted swim, a rather humbling experience. However, years later, that very bit of initial overconfidence, tempered by the learning from failure, allowed him to successfully run a triathlon.
So the failure wasn't the end, it was data.
It shows how pushing boundaries, even imperfectly, can lead to later success.
On the flip side, there's imposter syndrome, the feeling of not belonging, the gnawing anxiety of being caught out as a fraud.
So common.
Which can lead to being overly cautious and, crucially, doing nothing at all, paralyzed by self-doubt.
The fear holds you back.
What's truly insightful here is that Ellis argues genuine growth comes from skating on the boundary of these two starts.
On the edge.
A bit of healthy overconfidence allows you to stretch yourself and take necessary risks, to try new things. But caution helps you learn from the imperfections and inevitable missteps that arise.
It's about being brave enough to begin and wise enough to learn.
Nicely put.
Then there's the powerful concept to engage in the present, be of two minds about the future. Ellis uses the dramatic example of Super Bowl LI, the legendary comeback between the Patriots and Falcons.
Oh, that game. Incredible.
Where the Patriots were down a staggering 28-3 in the third quarter, feeling like the game was utterly over.
Yeah, everyone thought it was done.
He recalls a deeply impactful conversation with Ed Sauter, father of a Patriots player, during another game years earlier where they were down 24-0 at halftime. Sauter's wisdom was profound. You don't really expect them to win, but you go out and root for them to at least put together one good drive and maybe score a touchdown.
Focus on the next small step, not the mountain.
Exactly. Ellis applied this wisdom to his preteen children and himself in Super Bowl LI, rallying the sections around him with shouts like, "And how do you count to 3? First you need 1, now get on your feet."
Love that energy. Just get 1 point.
It was about focusing on the immediate actionable step. This idea of having two minds about the future, accepting near certain disaster or a highly improbable outcome, while simultaneously pushing for the very next, most immediate, achievable step, allows for incredible perseverance.
It keeps you moving.
It helps you discover unexpected paths to success that would be invisible if you were paralyzed by the overwhelming final goal. It's about not letting the perceived impossibility of the overall goal paralyze your immediate action and present effort.
You don't have to believe in the miracle, just the next small step.
That's it, perfectly.
So what does this all mean for facing adversity, personally and professionally? Ellis suggests practice the future to face adversity with grace. This takes preparation to a new level.
Mental rehearsal. This speaks directly to our natural tendency to worry about future events like being fired or having a project proposal rejected, which can ironically prevent us from even planning for them because the worry is so debilitating.
Worrying stops you from preparing for the thing you're worried about. Crazy.
It is. Ellis proposes a powerful mental rehearsal exercise. Mentally play out a deeply feared scenario, like a being fired meeting. Visualize arriving, seeing HR present.
Oof. Okay.
Then, crucially, plan how you would react with pride, dignity, and grace, rather than pleading, arguing, or collapsing in a heap.
Choose your response in advance.
It's a way to choose a manner that makes you proud, even if the event itself is a complete surprise and deeply upsetting. By making improbable adverse events part of your mental reality, by rehearsing your response, they become significantly less shocking when they occur.
You're less likely to react purely emotionally.
You're prepared to respond with chosen grace, rather than a panicked, unthought-out reaction you might later regret. It builds profound resilience and agency.
And tying into that, Ellis also highlights that helping others is an investment in helping yourself.
This one is beautiful.
This is especially impactful because many people, when facing challenges, struggle immensely to ask for help, fearing rejection or not even knowing what they truly need.
It's hard to ask for help. Here's where it gets truly interesting. Ellis references Mr. Rogers' timeless, beautiful wisdom. Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.
Such a great quote.
The profound insight here, Ellis argues, is that the benefit of helping extends not just to the person being helped, but also significantly to the helper.
Helping helps the helper.
Yes. So when you're going through a rough patch yourself, a remarkably useful and often overlooked strategy is to try and help someone else, perhaps someone distant in your network or someone you don't even know well.
Get outside your own head by focusing on someone else.
Exactly. The benefits are multifaceted and surprisingly powerful. It acts as a healthy distraction from your own problems, immediately improving your outlook. It strengthens existing and creates new connections. And the joy of giving, the satisfaction of making a positive impact, often reflects back at you, boosting your own mood and sense of purpose. You gain confidence from successfully helping someone else, which can be invaluable when you're feeling low.
That makes a lot of sense. It shifts your energy.
He tells a wonderful story of Kelly Victoria, a photographer who, during personal challenges at the start of the pandemic, found a fairy garden created by a 4-year-old.
A fairy garden.
Yeah. Their 9-month exchange of notes and gifts brightened each other's lives, building a fantastic friendship without either knowing the depth of the other's needs or difficulties.
Wow, that's lovely.
This illustrates helping in non-crisis situations, emphasizing the mutual, unexpected benefit of these small, consistent acts of kindness.
And finally, a challenging but ultimately freeing thought for personal leadership. Serenity is knowing that the crap you're wading through is crap you chose to deal with.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Radical acceptance.
This is a tough pill to swallow for some.
This is about radical acceptance and personal accountability. It's about accepting the costs that inevitably come with chosen paths. Sometimes we choose a path, a career, a project, a relationship that later has unforeseen or unappreciated difficulties and costs.
Buyer's remorse, maybe.
Perhaps. But by actively acknowledging that you chose this path, even with its downsides, you gain the serenity and mental fortitude to endure those challenges with greater peace.
It's empowering in a way, stops you feeling like a victim of circumstance.
It profoundly shifts your mindset from victimhood to agency, even in deeply difficult situations. It's a powerful act of self-ownership and emotional freedom.
And it really brings part I full circle, showing how personal choices, a cultivated mindset, and profound resilience are the absolute bedrock of effective leadership, enabling you to be a light to yourself before you can ever truly illuminate a path for others.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That internal foundation is everything.
So we thoroughly explored the foundational elements of personal leadership and how small, consistent shifts in our internal world can create monumental changes. But how do these deep, individual shifts then translate into the way we guide and interact with others, whether we have direct authority or are simply influencing.
Right. How does it ripple outward?
That brings us beautifully to part 2, team leadership guiding those around you.
This part is absolutely crucial because, as Ellis notes, your actions and your entire demeanor as a leader reflect on every other action you take and everything you say.
Consistency matters. Authenticity matters.
Hugely. Effective leadership, therefore, requires careful authenticity. One ill-spoken phrase, one dismissive gesture can counteract years of good work and trust building.
Undoing progress quickly.
It's about understanding how your actions, even the small ones, will change the world of your team rather than simply proving you're right in a given moment. Sometimes being right actually deprives you of the opportunity to truly lead someone.
That's a powerful point. It's about impact over ego. Let's delve into how Ellis suggests fostering inclusive and engaging environments, starting with the idea that inclusion is the sum of countless everyday micro-inclusions.
Yeah, micro-inclusions, not just the big programs.
This challenges the idea that inclusion is just about big, sweeping initiatives.
He argues that the problem isn't that you include one group too much, say, an organization that puts a lot of emphasis on Christmas videos for Christian employees,
Okay.
but that you don't actively create more inclusion opportunities for others, like thoughtfully celebrating Hanukkah, Diwali, or Eid. The goal isn't dilution or subtraction of one group's traditions. It's broader addition and expansion of inclusion for everyone.
More seats at the table, more ways to belong.
It's about cultivating belonging. So in the workplace, this means it's not about stopping existing football chats or golf outings for some colleagues.
Right, don't take things away.
But about consciously creating more connection moments with other colleagues. Actively seek out what common activities or interests you can chat about. Reading, knitting, parenting, obscure movies, local community events, to engage with everyone on your team and foster a sense of belonging across the board.
Be curious about people. Find common ground.
It's about investing that little extra effort in making everyone feel seen and included so they can truly reach their full potential. What's deeply insightful here is how Ellis connects this to mental energy and focus.
How so?
When people aren't consistently included, when they feel othered, they constantly encounter subtle friction in normal interactions. This requires them to burn extra mental and emotional energy just to navigate the day.
Energy that could be used for their actual work.
Exactly. Energy they desperately need to excel in their actual work. This othering can manifest in subtle daily ways, a dismissive tone, an unacknowledged contribution, being consistently left out of informal conversations, and these small moments accumulate over time, creating a sense of being unwelcome.
Death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Kinda, yeah. It's cumulative friction.
Building on inclusion, Ellis then discusses how navigating the path forward drives engagement. This addresses the common pitfall of the do-what-I-say trap that many leaders fall into.
Oh, the command and control approach. Ellis recounts a frustrating anecdote where his boss shot down every team idea, no matter how good.
Ugh, demoralizing.
And then simply demanded the team get on board with his own problematic solution, regardless of their input. This predictably led to deep frustration, disengagement, and ultimately an ineffective outcome.
Why? Because the idea was bad? Or the team just wasn't invested?
Both, potentially.
Yeah.
Either because the boss's solution was genuinely poor, or because the team was so disengaged that they didn't invest any effort in making it work successfully. The team was following orders, not leading with conviction.
It illustrates a critical point. People who are genuinely engaged in decision-making processes, who feel their voices heard and valued, are far more invested in the outcomes, and thus far more committed to making them successful. He cites an anecdote of a General Motors plant manager who, instead of imposing solutions from on high, had plant staff suggest solutions for a complex issue, even when external experts had very similar or even identical ones.
Why do that?
Yeah.
If the experts already knew.
Because it built crucial buy-in and ownership. True engagement isn't one way, it's a dynamic two-way street.
Got it. The process matters as much as the solution.
It involves actively listening to stakeholders, exploring a wide range of options, and transparently exposing the decision process to build trust, even when some of those suggested solutions might seem impractical at first glance.
And that ties into a deeper principle. People need to see versions of themselves to feel welcomed.
Representation matters.
It's simply not enough for an organization to be diverse in its hiring numbers.
Yeah.
People need to see that others like them are welcomed, supported, and thriving, to feel truly inspired and to feel they genuinely belong.
Yeah.
It's about visible representation and a culture of acceptance.
Absolutely. Seeing is believing in this context. This means asking truly critical questions about potential exclusionary practices, even subtle ones. Do job descriptions use language that might inadvertently make some people feel unwelcome?
Like using overly aggressive or maybe gendered terms.
Exactly. Do job requirements unnecessarily filter out excellent candidates? Perhaps by favoring academic education over relevant practical experience, which might disproportionately select against those from less privileged backgrounds.
Or requiring specific degrees when skills are transferable.
Do work hours and arrangements truly support diverse needs, allowing parents to drop off kids or people to rely on public transit commutes without undue stress?
These seemingly small barriers, even if individually undetectable or unintentional, accumulate to create significant difficulty, especially for the first person trying to break into a monochrome environment.
Right, that first penguin effect.
Ellis calls this subtle adding to difficulty a very real form of discrimination, even if it's not overt or malicious. It's the friction that slowly wears people down and pushes them out.
He uses the cake analogy to explain this concept, which I found so relatable for anyone who's ever parented or managed a team.
Ah, the cake. Tell us.
When his kids wanted cake, one loved frosting, the other preferred the cake itself. If he, as the parent, tried to make better, more efficient splits based on their stated preferences by removing their agency in the process.
Okay, so he just gave them what he thought they wanted.
Yes, but without letting them choose or participate. They became unhappy despite getting what they supposedly wanted. Why? Because it created mistrust and a feeling of being unheard.
Taking away their choice.
It illustrates how managers making trade-offs for teams can unintentionally create mistrust and unhappiness, even when their intent is genuinely good and rational.
He offers another compelling example with the headquarters restroom wellness room dilemma.
Right, in the new building.
In a new 19-story building, the debate was how to allocate single-occupancy restrooms versus wellness rooms on each floor. Initial proposals for simply alternating them floor by floor were seen as unfair and disrespectful by various groups with specific needs.
So how did they solve it?
What shifted the dynamic? Exposing the decision process, listening intently to stakeholders both publicly and privately, and exploring even seemingly impractical solutions without dismissing them out of hand.
Transparency and listening.
This built trust and acceptance, leading to a more accepted compromise even for a difficult allocation decision. It showed deep respect for diverse needs and legitimate concerns.
That's a huge lesson in the power of transparency and real collaborative problem solving. It's about the process just as much as the outcome.
The how matters deeply.
Building on fostering inclusive environments, Ellis offers vital advice on effective communication and feedback. He asserts that feedback needs to be a window, not a one-way mirror.
Ooh, interesting metaphor. A window, not a mirror.
That sounds like a powerful distinction.
It absolutely is. This chapter critiques common peer feedback sessions, which often devolve into mere descriptive name-calling that doesn't resonate or is simply a reflection of the giver's own impulses and weaknesses.
Like projecting your own stuff onto someone else.
Exactly. The problem is that givers of feedback often view the recipient through a one-way mirror, projecting their own biases, their own strengths, or their own frustrations onto them. For instance, if you're particularly strong in a specific skill, it's incredibly difficult to tell someone else to stop misusing it.
Why?
Because they see your success with that skill and wonder why they can't do the same. You're judging them by your own strengths, not their context.
The mirror reflects you, not them, clearly.
Precisely. So to overcome this one-way mirror effect, feedback must focus squarely on impact and, crucially, solutions, which should ideally come from the receiver, not just the giver.
Focus on the effect, not just the action.
Instead of saying, stop arguing so much, which is often unhelpful if arguing is part of their expert role or personality, focus on the effect their behavior has. He gives the very concrete example. Several other people asked to not have you invited to meetings because they felt you were wasting their time.
That's direct and undeniable.
That shifts the focus from a subjective judgment to a clear, undeniable, real-world consequence, making the feedback concrete and actionable.
And that leads naturally to the next point, which is so prevalent in our self-help saturated world. Unsolicited advice won't always apply.
Oh boy, yes. The internet is full of it.
We're often tempted by clickbait ideas like, just do this one simple trick, or 5 steps to success.
The problem Ellis explains is that when we simplify unsolicited advice, We often, perhaps unintentionally, lose valuable nuance and context. If you do X, Y will happen often really means for some group, which I happen to be in and assume you are, doing X will increase favorable outcomes by some small amount.
Without the fine print.
Right. Without those critical caveats and contests, listeners might feel implicitly categorized into an outgroup, leading to feelings of being othered or not human if the advice doesn't apply to their unique circumstances.
It can feel like, oh, that advice isn't for people like me.
It can be quite alienating. What's truly insightful here is Ellis's own example. His personal practice of responding, "I'm fantastic," when asked how he is.
We talked about that earlier.
While this helps him maintain a positive mindset, rooted in his own good fortune and mindfulness, he acknowledges it would ring hollow for someone genuinely struggling with clinical depression, profound trauma, or vastly different life circumstances.
The context is everything.
The core lesson here for leaders is the imperative to acknowledge uncertainty and communicate caveats whenever you offer advice or insights. Recognize that your advice might not work for everyone, and that's perfectly okay.
Be humble about your own experience.
It builds trust and shows humility.
That's incredibly self-aware and a crucial reminder that what works for one person isn't a universal truth. And speaking of self-awareness, Ellis then tells us to find your blind spots by hearing unbelievable things.
Lean into the stuff that sounds crazy.
This implies listening in a very specific, uncomfortable way.
He shares a compelling anecdote where he confidently dismissed a rumor that a vice president had been fired for sexual harassment, stating the company's zero-tolerance policy as proof of why it couldn't be true.
Okay, seems logical from his view.
But a trusted colleague insisted he was wrong, even implying Ellis wasn't truly able to hear or process that feedback from his comfortable vantage point.
Ouch. Challenging his reality.
Instead of dismissing her or arguing, Ellis started to truly wonder what could be true in her world and her experience that made her belief correct, even if it contradicted his own understanding.
He opened his mind.
He proactively asked for stories, resisting the urge to argue or justify his own position, and in doing so, he learned about hair-raising incidents that he, from his position of comfort and perhaps privilege, simply couldn't see or wasn't exposed to.
Wow. That takes courage.
This highlights the immense value of leaning into discomfort, actively seeking out unbelievable statements. Those things that defy your current understanding of reality serves as a powerful pointer to your blind spots.
Where your map doesn't match the territory.
Areas where you have little knowledge, insufficient exposure, or simply too much comfort to see existing problems. Knowing these problems early, before they fester and grow, allows for proactive improvement and remediation before they escalate into massive, visible issues.
You have to be willing to hear the uncomfortable truth.
It requires a genuine willingness to be challenged, to have your assumptions questioned, and to listen without immediate defense or justification.
It sounds like a fantastic way to proactively manage organizational risk, doesn't it? By inviting discomfort, you avert catastrophe.
It really is a form of early warning system.
So we've covered fostering environment and communication. Now let's get into strategic action and systemic improvement within teams and organizations, starting with a powerful communication strategy. Make the smallest and most defensible argument necessary to spur action.
The minimalist argument.
This delves into the very nature of human disagreement. Most human interactions, especially disagreements, aren't just about hard evidence. They're supported by inference, intuition, and faith.
Right. It's not always purely logical.
Both sides are often partially right and partially wrong, but they tend to focus intently on the opponent's weakness, leading to arguments held together by what Ellis calls cobwebs of hope, inference, and skepticism.
Trying to win, not necessarily find the truth.
It's a battle for absolute rightness, which is rarely achieved. What's truly insightful here is Ellis's strategy to shift the focus from winning an argument to simply generating forward motion.
Get things moving.
Instead of trying to prove a grand, overarching point, the goal is to find the smallest, most undeniable assertion based on concrete evidence that is still helpful. He gives the relatable example. Look, folks, someone marked these trees, which suggests there might be a path out of here. How about if we follow the mark far enough to see if there's another?
Just the next small step, like the Super Bowl analogy.
Exactly. The goal isn't to prove a grand plan. It's to move the group to action, to take the very next logical step.
And that, crucially, builds credibility. Small successes, even tiny ones, validate your insight and build momentum.
People start to trust your judgment.
Once a group is invested in a path, even a short, tentative one, They become far more receptive to broader arguments that justify that path because they've seen it work on a micro level.
Interesting. Build agreement piece by piece.
This applies to observers too. Minimalist arguments often sway more minds than grandiose, all-encompassing claims. It's about subtle influence over direct confrontation, moving from conviction to contribution.
And it sets the stage for a crucial element of leadership when things inevitably go wrong. When mistakes happen, don't waste energy blaming people. Invest energy in building better systems.
Systems over blame. This is huge for culture.
This challenges a very deep-seated human instinct.
Ellis points out that most errors in complex systems are, on the surface, triggered by human interaction, a copy-paste error, sending an email to the wrong recipient, clicking through a warning, or simply a momentary lapse in attention.
The human error explanation.
However, the deeper truth, the critical insight, is that the root cause is often a system not designed to be safe, a process that is fragile and prone to human error, even with the best intentions.
The systems set them up to fail.
Often, yes. This insight changes the incentive structure entirely. If a group truly believes these two sentences, that human action is just the trigger and the system is the root cause, then accepting failures becomes significantly easier.
Takes the personal sting out of it.
The human who triggered the error might even be praised for revealing an unsafe system, for highlighting a vulnerability that can now be fixed for everyone.
Wow, praised for making a mistake. That's radical.
When there's no immediate consequence to blame, everyone is incentivized to highlight system flaws, from the developer who lacked time for proper safety checks, to the manager who juggled too many projects, or the compliance team that missed a hazardous condition.
Everyone shares responsibility for the system.
What's truly powerful here is Ellis's point that leaders should apologize, within reason, of course, not out of weakness, but to show they're committed to better relationships and, crucially, to better work outcomes.
The leader apologizing for the system failing.
In a way, yes. It makes teams feel profoundly safe to be imperfect, fostering an environment where they're committed to development and learning, rather than being paralyzed by the fear of reprisal. It's a profound cultural shift, moving from a culture of blame to a culture of continuous improvement through psychological safety.
That's a profound cultural shift, moving from a culture of blame to a culture of continuous improvement through psychological safety. Now, here's an interesting one for leaders that might sound counterintuitive to some, especially if you think being indispensable is a good thing. Don't be irreplaceable. Be unclonable.
Ah, yes, the dangers of the hero engineer.
It's a common, almost universal scenario in organizations. Ellis describes the literal panic that sets in when a critical engineer, someone who had built many of the company's core systems and was the only one who truly knew how they worked, got engaged and decided to leave the company.
The bust factor of one. Terrifying.
Companies often rush to replace these irreplaceable people at great speed, leading to shortcuts, unstable systems, and a perpetuation of the single point of failure.
Being irreplaceable offers a leader short-term success. That person can fix bugs in minutes because they know the code base inside and out.
Looks efficient on the surface?
But this reliance creates a massive single point of failure, and often means a distinct lack of documentation, inadequate testing, or other critical professional disciplines that ensure system resilience. It's a hidden vulnerability.
A time bomb waiting to go off.
The leader's job, according to Ellis, is to actively fix irreplaceability by cultivating what he calls unclonable people.
Unclonable, what does that mean?
This means nurturing a team where each member brings a diverse, unique set of skills and perspectives, making the collective stronger than any single individual.
Building a resilient team, not just one superstar.
Exactly. When you identify an irreplaceable person, actively assign someone else to learn from them. Crucially, don't let the irreplaceable person fix problems directly. Instead, make them explain to others how to solve the problem, coaching rather than doing the work themselves.
Mentor, don't just fix.
Give them extra vacation, ensure documentation is updated, and protect their time off. This frees the formerly irreplaceable person to solve new, complex challenges while simultaneously developing the team's skills, making them collectively unclonable because their combined knowledge and capabilities are truly unique and resilient.
That's a genius strategy for both talent development and systemic risk mitigation. It builds capacity throughout the team.
Spreads the knowledge, builds the bench.
And speaking of risk, the final point in this section is to create safety to let people warn you of danger. This is about the flow of critical information.
Listening to the whispers before they become screams. Projects often function like a car with one driver, the project lead or senior executive, and many backseat drivers' team members seeing issues, yelling about potholes or impending crashes.
And the driver often tunes them out.
When those warnings, particularly from junior or less powerful voices, are ignored, projects predictably crash. The issue is often the subtle dismissal of these junior voices. Once a project gains momentum, raising novel risks can be perceived as dangerous to one's career.
Don't rock the boat. Don't be negative.
Senior leaders, invested in success and momentum, often dismiss junior team members who bring up issues, often making them feel less than competent or simply annoying, leading to them stopping bringing up critical issues altogether.
So the warnings dry up.
Precisely. What's truly problematic here is how risk conversations are often forced into a false binary choice. Either the risk is so catastrophic that it must halt the project entirely, or it's minor enough to be completely ignored.
All or nothing.
This either framework is a career hazard for those trying to speak up, because it gives no room for nuance or adaptation. Instead, organizations need to foster nuanced discussions about how to move forward while adapting to risks.
Adjust the plan. Don't just kill it or ignore the risks.
It's about adjusting the course, not necessarily abandoning the journey. The most novel risks, the ones nobody else has seen, are often discovered by junior team members, precisely the people who learn to stop bringing up issues when their concerns are dismissed or ridiculed.
You silence your best early warning system.
Creating an environment of genuine psychological safety ensures these vital warnings are heard and addressed, protecting both the project and the organization from unforeseen dangers.
It's all about creating an environment where truth can speak to power without fear of reprisal, allowing for true, informed decision-making.
That's the essence of safe to fail, or rather, safe to warn.
We've journeyed through personal growth and building effective teams. Now, in our final section, we tackle Part 3, Organizational Leadership Influencing Beyond Direct Reach.
The big picture stuff.
This is where the profound systemic changes happen, altering the steady state of an entire organization.
Indeed. Organizational leadership relies heavily on the strengths you've meticulously built in personal and team leadership. These broader systemic changes take more time and effort because you're working through many layers of people across various departments and functions.
It's a slower, heavier lift.
But they have a compounding exponential effect. Every lesson you apply and every system you improve makes future lessons easier to implement and future changes more sustainable. It's about setting a lasting direction.
And it all starts with setting a clear vision, values, and culture. Ellis begins this section with a fundamental assertion. You need vision to know if you're on a right path.
Mission and vision. Many organizations, particularly large ones, struggle to articulate truly meaningful mission and vision statements.
They often sound like corporate jargon.
Yeah. Ellis clarifies the critical difference. A mission is what you exist to do your accomplishments, how the world will be different because of your existence.
The what?
In contrast, a vision is who you exist to be your character, how you made changes, how you will be different as an organization in the future.
The who and how.
Competing organizations can have similar missions but radically different visions, and it's the vision that defines their unique identity and path.
He emphasizes that a strong vision, like his example of helpful, sustainable guides to a safer destiny, should be incredibly clear and inviting, resonating even with the most junior newcomers on their very first day.
Something people can actually connect with.
Weak or poisonous visions, on the other hand, distract and can even cause harm. Superlative visions, to be the best at, are often muddy and uninspiring.
Empty adjectives.
Backward-looking visions are fragile and don't inspire future growth.
Yeah.
And visions focused solely on mission or execution, most innovative, cost-effective, can actually be poisonous.
Poisonous? How?
Unintentionally guiding managers to make poor choices that ultimately harm the organization's culture and long-term health, like cutting corners on safety to be cost-effective.
Okay. Misaligned incentives again. The best visions, Ellis argues, enable a shared identity, provide a robust framework for guiding values, and dynamically drive how the organization will become something different and greater.
Vision isn't secondary to mission. While mission tells you where to go, vision dictates how you're going to get there and who you'll become along the way, providing a moral and operational compass.
The soul of the organization, maybe.
And reinforcing that, he states, values are the trail markers that keep you on the right path, even when the wrong path looks more attractive.
Values as guardrails.
It's about translating that vision into daily action.
Values truly fill in the practical application of an organization's vision. They shouldn't just be universal generic platitudes like be kind or don't cheat. which offer no real guidance.
Table stakes, really.
The most effective values, Ellis argues, create productive tension, not by being weaponized against junior staff to punish them, but by genuinely constraining the whims of managers and senior leaders.
Values should apply upwards most strongly.
Yes. Imagine a value like radical transparency. It sounds great, but it creates tension for a manager who might want to hide a project failure. That tension, that internal friction, forces better decisions because the value acts as the true guardrail against self-serving or short-sighted choices.
Makes it harder to do the wrong thing, even if it's easier.
Exactly.
And once you have that vision and those values, you have to actively nurture and feed them. Ellis explains, you have to feed a culture to see it flourish. It won't just happen by itself.
Culture needs tending, like a garden. While a good culture can sometimes arise accidentally through happy circumstance, sustaining it over time requires deliberate, intentional, and consistent investment.
Can't just set it and forget it.
He provides a fascinating illustrative anecdote about an incident report bureaucracy. An incident report, initially written to explain what went wrong and how it would be fixed, was stripped of all meaningful content by layers of review.
Oh no, death by committee.
A lawyer removed anything suggesting fault, a product marketer, anything disparaging products, a product manager, anything not on the roadmap, and a sales executive, anything that might jeopardize customer relationships.
So what was left?
The heartbreaking result was a report that essentially said nothing, completely devoid of any useful information or lessons. This highlights the insidious problem of bureaucracy. It's an accumulation of small groups, each formed around past bad events, trying to steer away from that specific past event.
Protecting their own little patch.
The net effect is often steering the entire organization away from any good outcomes whatsoever, paralyzed by a fear of past mistakes.
Steering away from everything leads nowhere.
To prevent this, Ellis advises that a leader must remain firmly in the driver's seat, actively collaborating with various reviewers to ensure the content remains beneficial, even when specific words are edited for safety or legal reasons.
Fight for the substance.
It's about guiding the organization through the bureaucratic process, ensuring the core message, the learning, and the original purpose aren't lost in the overwhelming desire for safety or risk aversion.
Yeah.
It demands constant vigilance and a clear sense of purpose.
That's a crucial insight for navigating the complexities of large organizations, ensuring that the original intent isn't diluted by layers of well-meaning, but ultimately counterproductive process.
Requires real leadership stamina.
Now, let's explore measurement and attention, which are critical aspects of effective organizational leadership. Ellis makes a powerful point with, expect what you inspect.
What gets measured gets managed or mismanaged.
It sounds deceptively simple.
He shares a compelling story from his bartending days in 1993, working at a Guinness-owned resort. There was a competition to sell Classic 6 whiskeys, with a prize for the most shots sold and an added incentive for selling at least 90.
Okay, a sales contest.
Ellis, being competitive, aggressively upsold, even buying a few shots himself purely to win the prize.
Knuckles, whatever it takes.
He won the competition. But a few days later, the manager expressed deep disappointment, stating Ellis had been too aggressive with guests.
Wait, but he won based on the rules.
Exactly. What's absolutely fascinating here is the clear case of misaligned incentives. The true goal, Ellis suspects, was positive brand awareness, politely suggesting new whiskeys and building positive customer relationships.
The unstated goal.
But by measuring purely sales volume, Guinness got precisely sales volume, even at the cost of a potentially negative customer experience and brand perception.
Be careful what you measure. You might get it.
This leads directly to his gorilla in the room concept, which also forms chapter 45. If you don't pay attention, you'll miss the gorilla in the room.
Right, the selective attention thing.
Ellis's core point is that whatever you measure, whatever you intensely focus your attention on, you're going to get more of. Leaders must anticipate unintended consequences and be willing to immediately alter measurement programs if they aren't incentivizing the true desired improvement or are actively creating perverse outcomes.
Like the sales volume costing brand goodwill.
High sales, in this case, came at the cost of a negative brand experience. The gorilla, perhaps, being the true customer sentiment, which was completely overlooked.
That immediately makes me think of the famous selective attention test by Chabris and Simons, where viewers focused on counting basketball passes completely miss a person in a gorilla suit walking through the scene.
The invisible gorilla. It's a perfect metaphor for organizational blindness.
In an organizational setting, if leaders focus intensely on one priority, a second, even if vitally important, receives little attention and soon effectively disappears entirely from their awareness.
This is clearly seen in the unlimited time-off trend, which many companies have adopted. In theory, it's brilliant. It eliminates liability for the company and encourages employees to recharge without micromanaging vacation banks.
Sounds good on paper.
But in practice, without accrued time or clear organizational norms, managers can more easily deny requests due to work pressures or tight deadlines, ironically leading employees to take less time off than they would with a traditional system.
So the policy backfires.
It can. The organizational leader might champion time off, but individual managers, focused on their direct responsibilities and bonuses, might make choices that completely contradict the stated value, and the gorilla is the actual low amount of time employees are taking.
So Ellis says organizational leaders must actively inspect processes like time away, recruiting pipelines, or promotion opportunities for minimums.
Not just maximums, but minimums. Are people taking enough time off?
For example, checking if teams aren't taking enough time off, or if diversity goals are being met at the lower end of the funnel. This teaches leaders the organization's true, lived values, not just the stated ones, and helps them make better, more informed choices about where to direct attention and resources.
You have to check if the reality matches the policy. You can't just set a rule. You have to inspect to ensure it's being followed in the spirit it was intended.
Finally, let's explore planning for uncertainty and managing failure, a crucial aspect of organizational resilience. Ellis kicks this off with a powerful analogy. Whether you jump out of an airplane or get pushed out, you still need a parachute.
Preparation is key, regardless of the circumstance. This chapter begins with the idea that from a distance, complex systems often appear deceptively simple, like the casual observation of a custodian who simply marks a boiler with an X for a $30,000 fix, implying a straightforward process.
Underestimating complexity.
This means organizations often profoundly underestimate the true complexity and the meticulous preparation needed to manage them effectively.
Here's where Ellis shares a truly unique and brilliant example. His company's internal zombie uprising disaster recovery scenario.
Chuckles. Zombies. Seriously.
Seriously, they planned for a fantastical, seemingly impractical scenario. An inaccessible building, but with all people still functional. While it sounds absurd, this impractical scenario, by forcing deep thinking about distributed work, remote access, and essential functions.
Okay, making them think outside the usual boxes.
Inadvertently led to incredible preparedness for very real-world, unexpected events like the Boston Marathon bombing and, years later, the COVID-19 pandemic.
Wow. So zombie planning helped with a pandemic.
The underlying plans for remote work and distributed operations developed for zombies were remarkably sound for a global health crisis.
The profound value of preparation, even for unconventional, seemingly impractical scenarios, is clearly evident here. Unexpected events can be handled as if you had prepared for them for years, simply by having packed a parachute through unconventional but extremely thorough planning.
It's about building underlying resilience
and adaptability into your systems and processes that can then be leveraged for a wide range of unforeseen challenges, not just the ones you anticipate.
And it links beautifully to the next point. There is no perfect plan. There is only the best plan so far.
Fighting perfectionism.
This counters the common paralysis of seeking ideal, flawless solutions.
Ellis shares a personal insight from his relationship. His wife would often ask him for advice, not because she needed a solution, but to gauge her own gut reaction to a problem she was already wrestling with.
Using him as a sounding board.
He learned to be a reflective sounding board rather than a direct decision maker for her. This taught him that sometimes simply articulating an option or hearing it reflected back allows for self-reflection and clarity that moves the process forward.
He then offers the wonderfully simple M&M analogy for dealing with unbounded choices, which is something so many of us face in complex projects.
The M&M analogy. Okay, I'm curious.
When brainstorming or evaluating options, you don't try to compare everything at once. Instead, you compare just 2 ideas, M&Ms at a time, keeping the hardest or best one.
Like a tournament bracket for ideas.
Exactly. The current best M&M so far becomes a perfectly good decision point, signaling a willingness to change and adapt while ensuring continuous progress.
So you always have a best option, even if it changes.
Every test, every comparison matters, and you can stop at any point, confident that your current best M&M is a genuinely good choice, not necessarily the perfect one.
This approach ensures that you are always making progress, always iterating, rather than getting bogged down by the sheer volume of options or the pursuit of an elusive, perfect solution.
Keeps momentum.
It fosters a mindset of continuous iteration and improvement, always searching for something better, but crucially, never getting stuck waiting for an ideal that may never arrive.
This feeds into a very provocative idea, especially for organizations that tend to be risk-averse.
Yeah.
If you aren't regularly failing at future bets, you aren't taking enough risk.
Ooh, failure is a good sign. Counterintuitive.
This speaks to the fundamental difference between organizations that prioritize playing not to lose versus playing to win.
Defensive versus offensive strategy.
Organizations that play not to lose will naturally take smaller, safer risks, which inevitably leads to smaller, more incremental successes. Playing to win, by contrast, accepts that failure is an inherent part of innovation and moves on quickly, understanding it's a necessary part of growth and breakthrough.
Fail fast. Learn fast. He counterintuitively suggests measuring a minimum acceptable failure rate in processes.
A minimum failure rate.
Yes, especially early in a product launch cycle where ideas are cheap and the cost of failure is low. Early gates, he argues, should have high failure rates, perhaps as high as 90%, meaning most ideas should be discarded.
Weed out the bad ideas quickly.
Later gates, closer to launch, should have much lower failure rates, maybe 5%. This incentivizes quick failure and rapid iteration, discarding bad ideas efficiently.
The key is to strategically mix your bets. Blend safe, incremental bets that provide steady returns with high-risk, big payoff plans that could revolutionize your market.
A portfolio approach to risk.
The crucial understanding is that different bets naturally have different expected failure rates. The clearest sign that you're taking enough risks, that you're truly pushing the boundaries of innovation, is precisely that you don't always win.
If you never fail, you're playing it too safe. You embrace the losses as part of the intelligent, calculated strategy for bigger wins.
And when those failures inevitably happen, whether in small bets or large projects, Ellis views them as an invaluable opportunity. Failure is an opportunity to provide great customer service.
Turning a negative into a positive moment.
He shares his famous ravioli incident. At a conference, despite his communicated dietary restrictions, no dairy, egg, pork, shellfish, he was served cheese ravioli.
Oops. Big mistake for someone with restrictions.
Instead of just grumbling, his very public but polite social media post about it led to an immediate apologetic hotel manager reaching out, a chef taking custom orders for him, and even unexpected gifts.
Wow, they really stepped up.
What's truly powerful here is that without failures, great customer service is often just expected. It's the baseline. But when a failure occurs, when an organization stumbles, how that organization responds is dramatically amplified.
The recovery is what people remember.
Especially if the response is unusual or goes above and beyond fixing the problem and providing a truly great experience, even if it wasn't strictly their fault or the fault of the individual. This turns a negative experience into a memorable, positive story, strengthening customer loyalty far more than if no failure had occurred at all.
Creates advocates out of detractors.
And finally, a capstone thought for organizational leaders who constantly feel like they're putting out fires. If you spend all your time fixing current crises, you aren't averting future crises.
The tyranny of the urgent, the crisis trap, is incredibly real and pervasive. Crisis response consumes vast amounts of energy, distracts significantly from progress, and critically, deflects energy from the boring maintenance work.
The unglamorous preventative stuff.
The preventative measures that are essential for averting future crises. He uses a vivid garden analogy. Constantly removing rabbits or pulling weeds, fixing immediate crises, distracts from identifying and fixing underlying, ever-present hazards, like a broken fence or poor soil quality.
Treating symptoms, not the root cause.
These are the systemic issues that cause the recurring problems, like lacking automated systems or robust quality controls, or a culture of psychological safety that allows problems to be surfaced early. The crucial takeaway for any leader at any level is to prioritize proactive work.
Invest in prevention, not just reaction.
Instead of just reacting to immediate triggers and putting out the most visible fires, spending time finding and addressing subtle, pervasive hazards, even if they weren't the direct cause of any one specific crisis, is time incredibly well spent.
Saves you time and pain down the road.
It protects future time, energy, and resources, allowing the organization to move beyond a perpetually reactive stance to a truly proactive one, averting the next big problem before it even begins to manifest.
That's a perfect encapsulation of the 1% leadership philosophy, isn't it? Small, deliberate, consistent improvements today to prevent monumental, draining problems tomorrow.
Beautifully summarized. It all comes back to those small daily shifts.
We've journeyed through Andy Ellis's 1% leadership, discovering that true leadership is built brick by brick, not in grand leaps, starting with profound personal growth, extending to intentional team dynamics, and culminating in systemic organizational improvements.
It's a holistic view, personal, team, organization.
It's about recognizing that every small, deliberate action, every conscious choice, compounds over time, making you and your environment incrementally but powerfully better.
This deep dive truly reveals that being an impactful leader isn't about innate charisma or heroic one-time acts of brilliance. It's about consistent, everyday choices.
The small things.
It's about how you approach your day, your interactions, your challenges, and your opportunities for growth. It's about building trust, fostering genuine inclusion, learning from every single misstep, and prioritizing the long-term health and resilience of yourself and your systems.
So as you reflect on these powerful insights, what 1% improvement will you identify and commit to implementing starting today?
A challenge to the listener.
Will you embrace the superpower of being wrong? Gift an unexpected act of kindness to a stranger, set a new non-negotiable wellness boundary for yourself, or perhaps actively seek out a blind spot in your own understanding.
So many possibilities.
Remember, true leadership begins with you and ripples outwards, and often the greatest growth, the most fantastic future, comes from courageously embracing discomfort and imperfection. What small step will you take to lead yourself, your team, or your organization into a more fantastic future?